I never thought the day would unravel like it did. It started like any other. Me, Quinn, rushing through my morning routine, barely managing to gulp down a cup of coffee before heading to the clinic. But when I got home that evening, everything changed. The first thing I noticed was the eerie quiet. Usually, the house was a cacophony of Theo's laughter or the TV blaring some cartoon. But today, silence echoed off the walls. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe Theo was out with Lorraine and Hank. I headed to my room, eager to shed the day's stress. That's when I saw it. Or rather, didn't see it. My father's watch, the one thing I had left of him, was gone from its usual spot on the dresser. Panic surged through me like a cold wave. I rifled through the drawers, checked under the bed, even scoured the bathroom, but it was nowhere to be found. I stormed out of my room, my heart pounding. "Sage!" I called, my voice cutting through the silence. "Have you seen my watch?" Sage appeared at the top of the stairs, her expression a perfect mask of innocence. "What watch?" "The one Dad left me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It was on my dresser this morning, and now it's gone." She leaned against the banister, a sly smile playing at her lips. "Maybe you misplaced it. You know how scatterbrained you can be." I clenched my fists, a simmering frustration bubbling beneath my skin. Sage always had a knack for making me doubt myself, but not this time. "I know I left it there," I insisted. She shrugged, turning away as if the conversation bored her. "Well, I haven't seen it." Her dismissive tone only fueled my anger. I wanted to scream, to demand she take me seriously, but I knew it would be pointless. Sage had a way of twisting things, making it seem like I was the one in the wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. "If you find it, let me know," I said, my voice strained. "Sure, Quinn," she replied, already halfway down the stairs. "I'll keep an eye out." I watched her go, a sinking feeling settling in my stomach. Sage and I had never gotten along, but this felt different. It felt personal. My father's watch was more than just a timepiece. It was a link to a past that had been ripped away from me when he died. Losing it felt like losing him all over again. I sank onto the edge of my bed, staring at the empty spot on the dresser. The watch had been a constant in my life, a reminder of the man who had taught me to be strong, to stand up for myself. And now it was gone, just like him. As the evening wore on, I tried to shake off the feeling of loss, but it clung to me like a shadow. I busied myself with chores, hoping to distract my mind, but every little thing reminded me of what was missing. The clink of dishes, the ticking of the clock, even the soft rustle of leaves outside the window. Later, when Lorraine came home, I brought it up, hoping for some maternal comfort. "Mom, have you seen Dad's watch?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She paused, a crease forming between her brows. "No, honey. Did you lose it?" "I think someone took it," I said, glancing towards the living room where Sage was lounging on the couch. Lorraine sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I'll talk to everyone, see if it turns up." Her words were meant to reassure, but they only deepened my frustration. I knew she'd do her best, but Lorraine had always been more of a peacekeeper than a problem solver. And in our house, peace often meant turning a blind eye. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The watch was gone, but it felt like something much bigger was at stake. I didn't know what Sage was up to, but I was determined to find out. I had to. For my father, for myself. A soft knock on my door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Theo, his small face peeking through the gap. "Quinn, are you okay?" I managed a smile, ruffling his hair. "Yeah, buddy. Just thinking." He nodded, satisfied with my answer, and slipped back to his room. I watched him go, my resolve hardening. I might feel like an outsider in my own family, but I wasn't powerless. Not by a long shot. Tomorrow, I'd start digging. I'd find out what Sage was up to, and I'd get my father's watch back. One way or another. The morning after the watch went missing, I woke up to the sound of muffled voices drifting from the kitchen. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and headed downstairs, curious about the conversation. Lorraine and Hank were huddled over the kitchen table, their faces etched with concern. "I just don't know how we're going to manage," Lorraine was saying, her voice a mix of worry and exhaustion. Hank sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "We'll figure it out, Lorraine. We always do." I lingered in the doorway, unsure if I should interrupt. Lorraine noticed me first, her eyes softening as she gestured for me to join them. "Quinn, we were just talking about some changes coming up." The way she said changes made my stomach twist with apprehension. "What changes?" Lorraine exchanged a glance with Hank before turning back to me. "I'm pregnant." The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. I blinked, trying to process the news. Pregnant? Wow, that's unexpected. Hank chuckled, though it sounded more like a cough. Yeah, tell me about it. I forced a smile, though inside I felt a mix of emotions swirling. Congratulations, I guess. That's exciting news. Lorraine reached across the table, squeezing my hand. It's a blessing, really. But it means things are going to be a bit different around here. Different. The word echoed in my mind, and I knew exactly what it meant. More attention on the new baby, more time spent on family matters that didn't include me. I nodded, trying to appear supportive. Of course. Whatever you need, I'm here to help. But as I left the kitchen, a knot of frustration tightened in my chest. I could already feel myself slipping further into the background. My father's watch a stark reminder of how easily things could be taken from me. Later that day, I found myself at the park, seeking solace in the familiar routine of walking the trails. The crisp air helped clear my head, though my thoughts kept circling back to the announcement and what it meant for my place in the family. I was so lost in thought that I almost didn't notice Nolan jogging towards me, his camera slung over one shoulder. He waved, a wide grin on his face as he approached. Hey, Quinn. Fancy running into you here. I managed a genuine smile, grateful for the distraction. Hey, Nolan. Out capturing the beauty of nature? He nodded, falling into step beside me. Always. But enough about me. How are you doing? I hesitated, unsure how much to share. But there was something about Nolan's easygoing presence that made me want to open up. It's been a weird day. My mom just told me she's pregnant. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Wow, that's big news. How do you feel about it? I shrugged, kicking at a loose pebble on the path. I don't know. Happy for her, I guess. But it's complicated. I've always felt like an outsider, and now. Nolan nodded, understanding in his eyes. I get it. Family dynamics can be tricky. But you're strong, Quinn. You'll figure it out. His words warmed me, a reminder that I wasn't completely alone. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, the rustling leaves and distant chatter of park-goers filling the space between us. As we circled back to the entrance, Nolan paused, a thoughtful look on his face. You know, if you ever need a break from all that, you're welcome to join me on a shoot. It might be good to get away for a bit. I considered his offer, tempted by the idea of escaping, even if just for a day. I might take you up on that. Thanks, Nolan. We parted ways with a promise to meet up soon, and I headed home, feeling a little lighter. But as I walked through the door, the reality of the situation settled back over me like a heavy blanket. Sage was in the living room, her eyes glued to her laptop. She looked up as I entered, a smirk playing on her lips. Heard the big news. Guess you'll be playing second fiddle to a baby now. I ignored the jab, heading for the stairs. Her words stung, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Hey, Quinn, she called after me, her voice dripping with faux concern. You might want to check your room again. Things have a way of disappearing around here. I froze, her insinuation clear. I turned slowly, meeting her gaze with a steely resolve. If you know something about my watch, Sage, just say it. She shrugged, her expression unreadable. Just saying, maybe you should keep a closer eye on your stuff. I clenched my jaw, refusing to rise to her bait. Instead, I headed upstairs, determined to find out what game she was playing. She might think she had the upper hand, but I wasn't backing down. Not this time. The next few days felt like walking on a tightrope, each step more precarious than the last. The house buzzed with a tense energy, everyone tiptoeing around each other, like we were all waiting for something to explode. I was in the kitchen, mindlessly chopping vegetables, when I heard the raised voices from the living room. Lorraine and Hank were at it again, their words sharp and cutting. I couldn't help but listen, the tension drawing me in like a magnet. You can't keep hiding this, Hank, Lorraine said, her voice strained with frustration. We need to talk about it. Hank's response was muffled but unmistakably defensive. I'm handling it, Lorraine. Just trust me. I leaned against the counter, the knife forgotten in my hand. It wasn't the first time I'd overheard them arguing about money, but this felt different. There was a desperation in Lorraine's voice that made my skin prickle. Before I could make sense of it, Sage sauntered into the kitchen, her eyes gleaming with a knowing look. Sounds like things are heating up, she said, her tone casual but her gaze sharp. I ignored her, focusing on the task at hand. Not my business, I muttered, though my curiosity was piqued. Maybe not, Sage replied, leaning against the counter with a smug grin. But it could be useful information, you know? If you play your cards right. I set the knife down, turning to face her. What are you getting at, Sage? She shrugged, her expression infuriatingly coy. Just saying, sometimes it pays to know what's going on behind closed doors. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I felt a chill run down my spine, the realization that Sage was playing a game I didn't understand. But before I could press her further, the argument in the living room reached a crescendo. I can't believe you'd risk everything like this. Lorraine's voice cracked, a mix of anger and betrayal. I'm doing what I have to do, Hank shot back, his voice a low rumble. I moved to the doorway, peering into the living room. Lorraine stood with her arms crossed, her face a mask of worry. Hank was pacing, his movements agitated and restless. What's going on? I asked, stepping into the room. The tension was palpable, a living thing that filled the space between us. Lorraine sighed, her shoulders sagging. It's nothing, Quinn. Just adult stuff. I knew better than to accept that at face value. It doesn't sound like nothing. Hank stopped pacing, his gaze meeting mine with a mixture of frustration and something else. Fear, maybe? We're just having a discussion, he said, his voice gruff but lacking its usual authority. I nodded, though I wasn't convinced. There was more to this than they were letting on, and I had a feeling it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. As the evening wore on, I found myself restless, unable to shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. I retreated to my room, hoping for some peace, but my mind kept circling back to the argument and Sage's cryptic words. I was just settling into bed when my phone buzzed with a message from Nolan. Hey, you okay? Want to talk? I hesitated, then typed a quick reply. Yeah, just a lot going on. Can we meet up tomorrow? His response was immediate. Of course. Let's grab coffee. The thought of seeing Nolan lifted my spirits, if only a little. But as I lay in the dark, the weight of everything pressed down on me. The missing watch, the baby, the financial troubles. Each piece felt like part of a larger puzzle I couldn't quite see. The next morning, I met Nolan at our usual spot, a cozy cafe tucked away from the hustle of the city. He greeted me with a warm smile and a steaming cup of coffee. Hey, you look like you could use this. I took the cup gratefully, savoring the warmth. You have no idea. He leaned forward, concern etched in his features. Want to tell me what's going on? I hesitated, unsure where to begin. But as I recounted the events of the past few days, Nolan listened patiently, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm. When I finished, he leaned back, thoughtful. Sounds like there's a lot at play here. But you're strong, Quinn. You'll get through this. I nodded, though his words felt like a balm on a wound that refused to heal. I just feel like everything's falling apart. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. Then maybe it's time to start building something new. His words lingered in my mind as we parted ways, a seed of an idea taking root. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to take control of my own destiny, to stop letting the chaos dictate my life. As I headed home, I resolved to find out what Sage was up to and what secrets my family was hiding. It was time to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The decision had been weighing on me like a stone. I stood in the middle of my room, the faint glow of my laptop screen casting a pale light across the walls. The email offering a job in a neighboring city was open, the cursor blinking impatiently at the end of the message. It felt like a lifeline thrown into the stormy sea of my life, but grabbing it meant leaving everything behind. I heard a soft knock at the door, and Theo's small voice called out, "Quinn, can I come in?" "Sure, buddy," I replied, closing the laptop as he shuffled in, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. He climbed onto my bed, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Why do you look so sad?" I forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "I'm not sad, just thinking about some grown-up stuff." Theo nodded, his innocent face free of the complications that tangled my mind. "Are you going away?" His question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Why do you ask that?" "I heard Mom and Hank talking. They said you might leave," he said, his voice small and uncertain. I sighed, pulling him into a hug. "I'm just thinking about it, Theo. But no matter what, I'll always be here for you." He seemed satisfied with that answer, snuggling closer. I held him, my heart aching at the thought of leaving him behind. But I knew I had to consider what was best for me, even if it meant making difficult choices. The next morning, I woke early, determined to clear my head with a walk. As I passed the living room, I overheard Lorraine and Hank talking in hushed tones, their words carrying a weight I couldn't ignore. "We can't keep this from her, Lorraine," Hank said, his voice tinged with urgency. "I know, but how do we even begin to explain?" Lorraine replied, her tone laced with anxiety. I paused, my curiosity piqued. I wasn't one to eavesdrop, but something told me this was important. I lingered just out of sight, straining to hear more. The debts are piling up, and if she finds out about the mortgage, Hank's voice trailed off, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. I felt my stomach drop, the pieces starting to fall into place. The financial troubles, the tension between them, it was all connected. But why had they kept it a secret from me? I stepped into the room, my presence startling them both. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Lorraine looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and resignation. "Quinn, we need to talk." As they explained the situation, the mounting debts, the strain on the family, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. They'd kept me in the dark while everything crumbled around us. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "We didn't want to worry you," Lorraine said, reaching for my hand. "We thought we could handle it." I pulled away, the hurt too raw. "I'm part of this family too. I deserve to know what's going on." Hank sighed, his facade of authority slipping. "We're sorry, Quinn. We should have been honest." I nodded, though the apology felt hollow. The revelation shifted something inside me, a realization that I couldn't keep living in this environment of secrets and half-truths. I needed to take control of my own life. Later, as I sat in my room, the weight of my decision pressing down on me, Sage knocked and entered without waiting for an invitation. "Heard the big news," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I shot her a look, my patience wearing thin. "What do you want, Sage?" She shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "Just checking in. You know, family and all." I studied her, trying to read the subtext beneath her casual demeanor. "Cut the act, Sage. What's your angle?" She smirked, a glint of something unreadable in her eyes. "No angle, Quinn. Just wondering what you'll do now that you know the truth." Her words hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in a question. I realized then that she thrived on the chaos, using it to manipulate and control. But I wouldn't let her get to me. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze with newfound determination. "I'm going to do what's best for me. And that might mean leaving." Her expression faltered for a moment, surprise flickering across her features. But she quickly recovered, her smirk returning. "Well, good luck with that." As she left, I felt a sense of clarity washing over me. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to choose. I opened my laptop, rereading the job offer. It was time to take a leap of faith, to start building a life free from the shadows of my past. I clicked reply, my fingers steady as I typed my acceptance. It was the first step toward freedom, and I was ready to take it. The move to the new city was a whirlwind. I found myself in a small, cozy apartment, the walls bare and the air filled with the scent of fresh paint. It was a blank slate, a chance to start anew, but the echoes of my past clung to me like shadows. Work at the veterinary clinic was a welcome distraction. The routine of caring for animals, each with their own quirks and needs, grounded me. Yet, even amidst the bustle, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nolan was a constant presence, his support unwavering. We spent evenings exploring the city, finding hidden gems and sharing laughter that felt almost foreign after the tension of home. But beneath the surface, I sensed a distance growing between us, fueled by my unresolved fears and the secrets I carried. One evening, as we sat in a dimly lit cafe, Nolan leaned forward, his expression serious. "Quinn, I've been meaning to ask. How are you really doing?" I hesitated, stirring my coffee as I searched for the right words. "I'm okay, I guess. It's just a lot to process." He nodded, his gaze steady. "I get that. But if you ever need to talk, I'm here." I smiled, grateful for his patience. "I know. It's just I left a lot behind, and it's hard to let go." Nolan reached for my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "You'll get there. Just take it one step at a time." His words were comforting, but as we walked back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The next day, I received a call from Lorraine. Her voice was strained, the usual warmth replaced by an edge of urgency. "Quinn, we need to talk. It's about Sage." My heart skipped a beat, dread coiling in my stomach. "What about her?" "She's in town. She said she needed to see you." I felt a chill run down my spine. Sage showing up unannounced was never a good sign. "Did she say why?" "She claimed she wanted to make amends, but I'm not sure what to believe." A knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. Sage's motives were always shrouded in mystery, her actions unpredictable. "I'll talk to her," I said, though the prospect filled me with unease. Later that evening, Sage arrived at my apartment, her expression a mix of contrition and defiance. "Nice place," she said, glancing around as she stepped inside. "Thanks," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Why are you here, Sage?" She sighed, dropping onto the couch. I messed up, Quinn. I know that. But I want to make things right. I crossed my arms, skepticism etched into my features. And how do you plan to do that? She hesitated, her bravado faltering. I don't know yet. But I want to start by being honest. I studied her, searching for any hint of manipulation. Honest about what? She met my gaze, her eyes unusually vulnerable. About the watch. I took it. The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was a different beast. Why? I was angry, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. You were always Dad's favorite, even after he died. I wanted to hurt you. Her words cut deep, reopening old wounds. But beneath the hurt, I saw the fear that drove her actions. And now I'm trying to be better. I'm seeing a therapist, working through my issues. I want to give it back. I nodded, a mix of relief and resentment swirling inside me. I appreciate your honesty, Sage. But it's going to take more than that to fix things. She nodded, her expression earnest. I know, but I'm willing to try if you'll let me. As she left, I felt a strange mix of emotions. The revelation had shifted something inside me, challenging my perception of revenge and justice. Sage's admission was a step towards healing, but it also forced me to confront my own motives and the grudges I held. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with possibilities. Sage's confession had opened a door, one that led to a path of forgiveness and understanding. But walking it meant letting go of the anger that had fueled me for so long. The next morning, as I stood at the window watching the city come to life, I realized that the choice was mine. I could hold on to the past, or I could embrace the future with an open heart. It was a daunting decision, but one I knew I had to make. For myself, and for the life I wanted to build. Sage had been staying with me for a week, and the tension in the apartment was palpable. I wanted to believe she was trying to change, but old habits die hard. There was a constant undercurrent of suspicion, a feeling that at any moment, the fragile piece could shatter. Nolan had been patient, but I could sense his frustration growing. We'd planned a quiet dinner at home, hoping for a semblance of normalcy, but Sage's presence was a constant reminder of the chaos I'd left behind. As we sat at the small dining table, the conversation was stilted, each of us picking at our food. Nolan finally broke the silence, his voice careful but firm. So, Sage, what's your plan now that you're here? Sage looked up, her fork paused midair. I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking of finding some freelance work, maybe staying in the city for a while. Nolan nodded, though I could see the tension in his jaw. And how long is a while? She shrugged, her nonchalance grating on my nerves. Not sure. Depends on how things go. I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. Sage's indefinite stay was a strain on my relationship with Nolan, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was biding her time for something. After dinner, Nolan and I sat on the couch, the air between us thick with unspoken words. Quinn, we need to talk about this, he said, his voice gentle but insistent. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I know. It's just complicated. He turned to face me, concern etched into his features. I get that you want to help her, but at what cost? This is affecting us. I nodded, guilt gnawing at me. I just thought, maybe she really was trying to change. Nolan reached for my hand, his touch grounding me. I want to believe that too, but you need to set boundaries. For both our sakes. His words struck a chord, and I knew he was right. I'd been so focused on giving Sage a chance that I'd neglected my own needs and the relationship I was trying to build with Nolan. The next day, I resolved to talk to Sage to set some ground rules. But before I could, I received a call from Lorraine, her voice trembling with urgency. Quinn, something's happened. My heart skipped a beat, dread pooling in my stomach. What is it? It's Hank. He's been in an accident at work. He's in the hospital. The news hit me like a freight train, the world tilting on its axis. I mumbled a quick goodbye to Lorraine, promising to be there as soon as I could. I turned to Nolan, my voice shaky. I need to go back. Hank's in the hospital. He nodded, his expression softening. I'll drive you. The trip back was a blur, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When we arrived at the hospital, Lorraine was waiting, her face drawn and pale. He's stable, but it's serious, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As we sat in the waiting room, the weight of everything pressed down on me. Hank's accident had thrown everything into sharper focus, reminding me of the fragility of life and the importance of family, no matter how fractured. Sage showed up shortly after, her face a mask of worry. She sat beside me, her usual bravado stripped away. I'm sorry, Quinn. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I nodded, the anger and resentment I'd been holding on to dissipating in the face of our shared concern. We'll figure it out. Together. As the hours dragged on, I realized that my ideas of revenge and justice had been misguided. Holding on to past grievances had only served to isolate me further. It was time to let go, to focus on healing and rebuilding. But just as I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Lorraine approached, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and something else. Fear? Quinn, there's something you need to know. I braced myself, the tension in the air thick enough to cut. What is it? She hesitated, her gaze flicking to Sage before settling back on me. Hank. He's been hiding something. The debts, they're worse than we thought. He was trying to fix it, but... Her words trailed off, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. The revelation was a punch to the gut, a reminder of the tangled web of secrets that had ensnared us all. As I sat there, the weight of the situation pressing down on me, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could let this break me, or I could find a way to rise above it, to forge a path forward that embraced forgiveness and understanding. It was a daunting task, but one I knew I had to face. For my family, for Nolan, and most importantly for myself. The hospital corridors were a blur of sterile white and muted voices as I paced, my mind racing with the weight of Lorraine's revelation. Hank's financial troubles were far deeper than I'd imagined, and now, with him in the hospital, the responsibility fell on us to pick up the pieces. Sage was sitting in the waiting room, her usual bravado replaced by a quiet uncertainty. She looked up as I approached, her eyes searching mine for some sign of reassurance. Quinn, Save it, Sage, I said, cutting her off. We need to focus on what's important right now. She nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. I know. I'm sorry for everything. I took a deep breath, the tension between us palpable. We'll deal with that later. Right now, we need to figure out how to help Hank. Lorraine joined us, her face drawn with worry. The doctor said he'll need surgery, but with our financial situation. Her voice trailed off, the unspoken implications hanging in the air. I felt a surge of determination, a resolve to do whatever it took to keep our family afloat. Just as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed with a message from Nolan. I'm outside. Do you need anything? I texted back quickly, grateful for his support. Just you. Can you come in? Moments later, Nolan walked in, his presence a calming balm amidst the chaos. He wrapped me in a hug, his strength bolstering my resolve. What's the plan? He asked, his voice steady. We need to find a way to cover the costs, I replied, my mind already racing with possibilities. There has to be something we can do. Sage shifted in her seat, her expression thoughtful. I might have an idea. I turned to her, skepticism etched into my features. What kind of idea? She hesitated, glancing around as if weighing her options. I know someone who might be able to help. A friend from my design days. He owes me a favor. I raised an eyebrow, the suggestion unexpected. And you trust this person? Sage nodded, her gaze steady. As much as I can trust anyone. It's worth a shot. It was a gamble, but with few options left, I knew we had to take it. Okay, let's do it. But Sage, if this goes south. I know, she replied, her voice firm. I won't let you down. We spent the next few hours making calls, pulling every string we could think of. Nolan stayed by my side, his quiet support a constant anchor. As the day wore on, I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me, the stakes higher than ever. Finally, as the sun began to set, Sage returned with news. It's done. My friend agreed to help cover the costs, at least for now. Relief flooded through me, a small victory in the midst of the storm. Thank you, Sage. I know this wasn't easy. She shrugged, a hint of her old bravado returning. We're family, right? Gotta stick together. The words struck a chord, a reminder of the tangled web of connections that bound us all. Despite everything, we were family, and that meant something. As we sat in the waiting room, the tension slowly easing, I realized that the real battle had been fought not with fists or words, but with the choices we'd made. By coming together, we'd begun to dismantle the walls that had divided us for so long. But just as I thought we'd found a moment of peace, the doctor approached, his expression grave. There's been a complication with Hank's surgery. My heart skipped a beat, fear clawing at my insides. What kind of complication? He hesitated, the weight of his words heavy in the air. There's a risk of infection. We're doing everything we can, but it's critical. The room fell silent, the news a fresh blow. I felt Nolan's hand squeeze mine, his presence a lifeline in the storm. We'll get through this, he murmured, his voice steady. I nodded, the resolve I'd found earlier hardening into something unbreakable. We'd come too far to back down now. Whatever it took, I would fight for my family, for the chance to build something new from the ashes of the past. As the night wore on, I realized that revenge and justice weren't about retribution, but about finding the strength to forgive and move forward. It was a lesson hard-earned, but one that would guide me as we faced the uncertain future together. The days following Hank's surgery were a blur of waiting rooms and whispered conversations. We took turns sitting by his bedside, each of us grappling with the reality of our situation. But amidst the uncertainty, something remarkable happened. We began to heal. Sage was surprisingly present, her usual bravado softened by genuine concern. She spent hours at the hospital, talking to Hank, even when he was too weak to respond. It was as if the crisis had stripped away her defenses, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. One afternoon, as we sat in the hospital cafeteria, Sage turned to me, her expression earnest. "I've been thinking a lot, Quinn. About everything." I nodded, sensing the weight of her words. "And I've started therapy," she said, her voice steady. "I know I've messed up, but I want to change. For real this time." The admission was unexpected, a glimmer of hope in the midst of chaos. "That's a big step, Sage. I'm proud of you." She smiled, a hint of relief in her eyes. "Thanks. I know it'll take time, but I want to make things right." We sat in companionable silence, the air between us finally free of tension. It was a small victory, but one that felt monumental. As Hank's condition improved, Lorraine and I found ourselves talking more, the barriers that had once divided us slowly crumbling. One evening, as we sat in the quiet of the hospital room, she handed me a worn envelope. "I found this in your father's things," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "I thought you should have it." I opened the envelope, my heart skipping a beat as I recognized my father's handwriting. The letter was a simple message, filled with his hopes for my future and his belief in my strength. It was the closure I hadn't realized I needed, a reminder of the love that had shaped me. "Thank you, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This means everything." Lorraine reached for my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "I'm sorry for everything, Quinn. I should have been there for you more." I squeezed her hand, a sense of peace settling over me. "We're here now. That's what matters." In the weeks that followed, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point. The struggles and betrayals, the moments of doubt and fear, they had all led to this moment of understanding and forgiveness. As Hank recovered, we began to piece our lives back together, each of us committed to moving forward with a newfound sense of purpose. Nolan was a constant source of support, his presence a reminder of the life I was building beyond the shadows of my past. One evening, as we walked through the park, Nolan turned to me, a smile playing at his lips. "You've come a long way, Quinn." I nodded, the truth of his words resonating deeply. "We all have. It feels like a new beginning." He took my hand, the warmth of his touch grounding me. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As we continued down the path, I realized that the journey wasn't about revenge or justice, but about finding the strength to forgive and embrace the future. It was a lesson hard-earned, but one that would guide me as I navigated the complexities of life and family. But even as we moved forward, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that there were still stories left untold, questions lingering in the shadows. Sage's journey was just beginning, and I knew that her path to redemption would be fraught with challenges. Yet, I believed in her ability to change, to become the person she wanted to be. And as for me, I had found a sense of peace, a place where I belonged. I had learned to set boundaries, to protect my heart while remaining open to the possibilities of love and connection. In the end, the resolution wasn't about tying up every loose end, but about embracing the imperfections and uncertainties of life. It was about finding strength in vulnerability and hope in the face of adversity. As we headed home, the city lights twinkling in the distance, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For my family, for Nolan, and for the journey that had brought me here. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that was enough.